Like, black people have taken a lot of ginger characters. Superman's best friend is now black.
JJ, get your man.
Oh,
Get
Little
your
Mermaid.
man. Get your man.
The Little Mermaid is now black. Starfire is a ginger. Not anymore.
We did take Star. Damn it, you right.
As far as DC's concerned, he is right. We know the formula, DC. We see what
Wally West also.
you got that right. He's right. What the man? Batwoman, technically. She's redheaded in the comics. What kind of That's a hell of an observation.
Oh, here we go again.
So why movies, TV shows, video games, comics, media in general feel the need to change the race or ethnicity of previously established characters is still something I don't quite understand. And when I say I don't understand, let me clarify. I get why they're doing it, or at least I get why they tell us that they're doing it. You know, to be inclusive and add representation to different forms of media that may not have had it before and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I get that part. I think most of us do. I get wanting to add different viewpoints, ideas, cultures, or worldviews to a specific medium. It's one thing to want to create something that tells a story from a different angle, to create a character, world, or story that hasn't been told before from a perspective of someone who may not always get the chance to tell that story from that unique perspective. Most of us get that. Most of us can vibe with that. The act of making a character that's different from what mainstream is used to is fine. But what people tend to have an issue with is taking an already established character and completely changing either their race or their gender in order to virtue signal. That's where a lot of the pushback comes from. People don't care that you're creating a Russian superhero or an Indonesian bounty hunter. More people than not would probably welcome that change and breath of fresh air. But people do care when you take a character that's already known to be and look one way, but then force them to look a different way because reasons. I'm sure some of you guys have heard about the Harry Potter casting controversy. So it looks like HBO is planning on making a Harry Potter TV series that's supposed to span all of the books. Personally, growing up, I wasn't a huge Harry Potter fan. Nothing against the series or anything. I was just more into magical space wizards than magical non-space wizards. Though I did pick up Hogwarts Legacy, and I'll admit it was fun for what it's worth. By no means is it a true RPG, but I mean, what really is these days? These studios just throw that title on anything that lets you name a character, but I digress. If you're a hardcore Harry Potter lover, let's be honest, I'm sure you already have the game. But even if you're not, like I was, you'll probably find some enjoyment with it. Anyways, with the planned reboot of this franchise, of course the question of which actor is going to be playing what character is inevitably going to come up. This is where you can really make or break a fandom. So for one, we have John Lithgow, and forgive me, I might butcher some of these names, but he's going to be portraying Dumbledore. We can see it. We can visualize it. We can actually see him being Dumbledore. Good. Great. Then we have McGonagall being portrayed by Janet McTeer. Once again, look-wise, she's very believable to the character. She even has a similar naming scheme, but that's besides the point. Now, look at Snape. We all know who Snape is. The dark, brooding, jealous professor who was portrayed by the late Alan Rickman. So you may be wondering, who's going to be portraying this legendary, well-established character in this reboot?
Bruh.
Look, this isn't a shot against the actor himself. He seems to be a pretty talented guy, at least from the few scenes I've seen from him.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing, end them.
So this isn't anything personal towards the guy himself, but when you have a massive IP such as Harry Potter that has such a big fan base, These kind of drastic changes to the beloved characters are bound to have far-reaching backlash. Having this much controversy this soon before your TV show is even set to air would concern the f*** out of me if I was one of the CEOs at HBO. And if me, a guy who's just sitting in his house making a YouTube video, can see what the issue is here, there's no way you can convince me that these huge multi-billion-dollar companies don't see it too. The increase in established characters, races, and ethnicities being changed has been plaguing media for years now. From the likes of Ariel from The Little Mermaid to even Amber from the TV show Invincible. Some people can't help but feel like they're being forced to see their beloved childhood characters turning into something they were never meant to be in the first place. And sometimes, like in the case of Amber, they're changed for the worse. And that brings me to my next point. It's hard not to think that Hollywood is intentionally making decisions like these in order to stir the pot. It's no secret that creativity in Hollywood and the gaming industry is virtually non-existent right now. Why do you think we see so many remakes over and over and over again? People aren't as drawn to these forms of media like they used to because ever since the rise of things like PC and DEI, companies are afraid to take risks like they used to. And they feel like pandering to the vocal few is their best course of action. When clearly, time and time again, they've been proven wrong with massive box office flops and terrible user reviews. But then why? Why continue this course of action when it's so blatantly obvious that people don't care for this kind of stuff? They don't care to see their stories being written off a cliff. They don't care to see their characters turning into something that they're not. Why do these studios continue to propagate something that they know isn't working? The reason is pretty simple. Companies such as Disney have been infiltrated by people like Kathleen Kennedy who want to promote this agenda by any means necessary, no matter the cost. No matter the cost to the studio. No matter the cost to the consumers. No matter the cost to the final product. Again, I want to reiterate, the issue isn't the fact that these characters are of different races or ethnicities. The issue is that these characters already existed as one thing, but are then being forced to change into something else in order to pander to a specific audience. Remember that new Warriors spinoff that was trending back in like 2020, 2021 or something? Look, I'm not gonna lie, it didn't interest me in the slightest. I mean, look at these names. Snowflake? Safe Space? I mean, come on. I'm pretty sure the comic was dead on arrival, but I can still respect that they were trying to create completely new characters instead of messing with the original ones. Now, going back to the Snape thing, it seems pretty strange that from the plethora of white, dark-haired actors that could have played Snape, they instead picked someone who couldn't be further from the image we have in our heads when we think of him. And that brings me to another point, and that is image itself. With most established characters, when we think about them, we have an image of what they look like in our heads. You know, depending on who's portraying the character, because it may not always be a one-to-one lookalike. For example, as much as I think Michael B. Jordan is a great actor, when I think of the Human Torch, I think of this. Not this. And while we're on the subject, when I think of Captain America, I think of this. Not this. His name should have been American Eagle, by the way. I don't care what anybody says. And the thing with Falcon is that it at least makes sense because the original Captain America retired. But when it comes to Snape, I think someone like Adam Driver would have been a much better cast for the role. Yes, it is mainly because of his resemblance to the original character, but when you're trying to pull in hardcore fans of an IP like this, being able to reasonably hit them in their nostalgia is something that shouldn't be downplayed. I guess time will tell what'll happen when the series officially takes off. Maybe everyone's criticisms will be unfounded and the series will become a massive success. There's no denying that's a possibility. But there's enough pattern recognition to take into account when studios go down this path. Like I said, I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan in the world, but that doesn't mean I can't understand and empathize with the people who are when things like this come up. Because these kind of issues aren't just tied to one specific IP. It's everything from TV shows to movies to video games. It's all media that millions of people grew up with and don't want to see destroyed, especially by people who don't truly understand the stories that they're affecting. I mentioned I was a Star Wars fan before, but look at what Disney's done with the once beloved series. Honestly, I think the best thing to come out of Disney's Star Wars is like Visions and Tales of the Jedi. But yeah, let's just wait and see what happens. If the show ends up being a hit, great. If not, we'll just add it to the list of flops.